Welcome to The Real Math of Business with Eleanor Bennett, where you plus this podcast equals better decisions. I'm Eleanor Bennett, speaker, author, and leadership expert. I work with chief executive officers and chief financial officers really to help them create universally investable companies where people serve people and the math just works. This week, I'm chatting to Liz McMillan, but first, here is my thought-provoking question. So imagine this. You're a senior leader in the business. You have a partner and children. You might have a dog. Your daily routine sounds a little bit like this. You wake up, you exercise, you get the kids up, make lunches, get them to school. You drive to work, you listen to a podcast, maybe this one. You get to work, you're in meetings most of the day, and you end the day, you sit down, you wrap up, you do some of your own computer work, and then you head home for the day. You listen to some music on the way home to help yourself wind down, and then you arrive home to the beautiful chaos of life. Dinner, bedtime, talk to your partner, and then go to sleep. Sound familiar? Not too much time for introspection or self-vulnerability in that schedule. Your whole day revolves around keeping it all together for your partner, for your team, for your family, for your business. And because of all of this structure and keeping it all together, we miss a lot of stuff. And actually, we miss a lot of the hard stuff. The stuff that could subtly but significantly shift the dial. So my thought-provoking question for you today is, what are you not willing to look at about yourself, about your team, or your business? I want you just to take 5 minutes with that question, or I invite you just to take 5 minutes with that question and just see what comes up, because this is a deep question, and it's intentionally deep. So we put it off because when you think about the day, if that daily routine resonated with you, there's not a whole lot of time to do that deep thinking. Why would I ask myself a hard question when I could ask myself an easier one, or I could go to bed 10 minutes earlier? So we just put ourselves off. We just put it off. So ask yourself the question, spend 5 minutes, jot the notes down on a piece of paper or in your notes in your phone, whatever comes up, and then come back to it at a later stage. Just have the courage and give yourself the gift of asking yourself the question. That's it. What are you not willing to look at about yourself, about your team, or about your business? And now to our chat with Liz McMillan. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome my guest for today. With more than 20 years leading technology, SaaS, and publishing organisations across Silicon Valley and Australia, Liz has first-hand experience guiding teams through growth, complexity, and change. As a two-time CEO who led successful exits at Dictionary.com and TeachStarter, and with experience overseeing more than $500 million in M&A and managing $300 million in revenue, Liz McMillan brings a rare blend of strategic depth and practical leadership insight. Liz's work centres on alignment as something leaders can actually use to strengthen trust, culture, and performance, especially when things feel busy or uncertain. Her approach is grounded, practical, and focused on what works in real leadership situations without jargon or over complication. What a funny word. Stuff up without complication. Liz, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, Alana. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am just so excited to chat about the real math of business. It's such a fascinating concept.
And look, thank you for saying that, because I think it's a really fascinating concept as well. And I am so privileged to have each of my podcast guests on, because I truly don't know what's going to come of it. And what I like to say is, the real math of business is a bit of a hypothesis. I don't know
Yes.
the answer. And for me, that's what I find really fascinating. And
Yeah.
whilst and so as a result, the conversations I like to have are very free-flowing. I kind of, arm myself with a very small handful of questions, just in case we both have freeze moments. And I thought I was going to start somewhere. But then before we jumped on, you said, I'm really excited to have this conversation. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And you said, it's fascinating how much my career, how it's relevant to your career journey.
Yeah.
And that was kind of when Jez and I we have to press record before we do share too much gold, before we've started. So I would actually like to, use that as a prompter to kind of ask you, like, what have you been thinking about? What's piqued your interest about this idea of the real math of business, and how is this relevant to the career, this very successful career you've
Yeah.
had to date?
I started my career as an analyst. Like, I've really cut my teeth as an analyst. So numbers was my currency. Like,
Mm,
that's what I worked with. But my first kind of real boss, like out of like, I had jobs in the bakery when I was going to high
yeah.
school, but my first professional job, shall we say, when I left university, he said to me very early on, analytics is both an art and a science.
Hmm.
And that's always stuck with me, that even though the job of an analyst is to study the numbers, there's an art to it.
Mm.
And the art was storytelling. You're telling the story of the numbers tell the story of what the people are doing in the business.
Yeah.
And that was always like, even as, a 23-year-old analyst in a very large business, very successful business, I was storytelling. And, this was a business that was very political. It didn't have a real vision. It didn't have real values. It didn't have a real purpose. It made a lot of money, but it was very transactional. And
Hmm.
everything in that business was very transactional, from the way it dealt with its clients to the way that decisions got made internally. And so the numbers were oftentimes the arbitrator of how decisions got made. People would come to me, this 23-year-old analyst, and be like, I want this and I want this, and what do the numbers prove? Because the numbers will make the decision. And here I am, this little analyst
Hmm.
who has to pick a side with the numbers. But I'm a person. I'm a person with my own opinions, with my own bias, with my own vision and values and ideas about where the business should go. And it is art and it is science. So as much as I want to be scientific in my analytic skills, like, the numbers can tell two different stories depending on which version of art I apply to it. So
Wow.
from very early on, um, this idea that math is about people has been very inherent in my career.
I'm so curious. How do you tell the story behind the numbers in a company that has no vision, no values, no purpose, is very transactional and very political? I mean, and transactional. That's a story that you don't really want to share publicly. How did you do that?
Well, it's a lot of little stories, It's a lot of little stories. Our business was this is going to age me, but our business was partnering with software companies to embed toolbars in browsers. And for those of us who have been around that long, the toolbars were they had a search bar in them, and the search bar would then would take the end user to a search page. So this is kind of at the dawn of, like, when Google was just becoming a little bit more prolific.
Mm.
But we could then monetize that search page, and then it was a vehicle for the software company to make money to monetize their software. So we thought about the unit economics of this business through LTVs. And I had a very clear point of view that the LTV was driven by two things.
And just
The
quickly define LTV for everyone who
Oh,
may
sorry,
not
yeah,
know.
of course. Lifetime value.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz.
The revenue that could be the unit economics of the business were really defined by the lifetime value of a user over their lifetime of using this
Mhm.
toolbar. And it was driven by two things. my clear point of view was it was driven by the audience of the software partner and the quality of the search page that we were taking the user to.
Mhm.
And that was it. But we had a company that was like, everyone in the business was like, we've got to build all these bells and whistles on the toolbar, and we've got to, build these fancy integrations, and we've got to, and from my point of view, I was like, 80% of what we did didn't matter. But it was all about people justifying their roles in the organization. And I was like absolutely clear that we could strip back 80% of what we did and make the same amount of money. But as a 23-year-old analyst, you're not really empowered to make statements like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you share that with anybody?
Um, I didn't share it that directly,
Yes.
but I would, oftentimes I was very blessed that I had a seat at the executive table, and I often
Mhm.
thought that it was more an observational seat rather than a
Okay.
participatory seat. But there would be a lot of decisions that I could influence. So there would be moments where there'd be a big roadmap review, and everything in the roadmap was transactional, a lot of horse
Mm.
trading.
Yep.
So I would say, I would influence the individual decisions and make sure the things that were about the search results page that I knew would
Yeah.
make a difference would make their way up in
Mm.
prioritization. But I just didn't feel, and this was my story, that as a 23-year-old analyst,
Yeah.
I could have, I, maybe I didn't have the analytical capability to tell the story that black and white.
Isn't that
It was a
fascinating?
suspicion. Yeah.
Yeah. And even to hear, like, there's a couple of things that you said that I just think, gosh, so profound from a 23-year-old to be able to see, you know, our LTV, our main metrics has two drivers. And what I can see as a 23-year-old is that 80% of what we do doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like to be able to have that clarity and see that through line as a 23-year-old is very powerful, particularly when, you know, there was so much noise and self-importance linked to that
Yes.
80%. It would have been really
Yes.
easy to kind of go, oh, I must be missing something. Because
Yeah.
if they all think that all of this other stuff is important, then I must, I must be missing that. How do I get caught up in that complexity? So that's fascinating for you to be able to have that clarity. And I suspect we'll talk more about that when we get into alignment and that topic. But you also said math is about humans.
Mm.
Tell me more about your perspective around that statement. It's a really powerful statement.
I think there's two angles to it. One, there's humans doing math. Like humans have made up math.
Yes.
Like, so, um, you know, humans make decisions in how to do the math.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it is the language of humans.
Wow. You just blew my mind, but keep going.
Um, if any other species was doing math, it would be a language of that species.
Mm.
But it is inherently something that we have used to solve human problems, to answer human questions. It is inherently human,
Mm.
and there is inherently a human bias. Like it is inherently about the way the human mind. It's like the questions are human questions and the answers are human answers.
Mm.
Like deep within how our mind works comes the answers of math. Um, and like the things that math is telling us about are human problems, right? They are the stories of humans, particularly in a business. If we look at a P&L, we've got a revenue line, and that revenue was generated by people, you know? Even if the revenue is selling widgets, well, people had to make and sell those widgets, you know? Like, I can't think of a business where a person isn't involved in some way, shape, or form in generating the revenue. And if you think about all the costs, well, people design, they architect, they influence, they create, they execute, they decide. People create the costs. It is inherently a human construct. A business is a human endeavor. So even though we can put numbers behind that, it's telling the story of something humans did.
And that's such a fascinating perspective, because the initial thought that comes to mind, Liz, is what if I don't like what the numbers are telling me?
Then
'Cause
change what the humans are doing.
But what if I'm looking at those numbers and I see myself in those numbers? Like, what if the numbers are reflecting, they're acting as a mirror to
Yeah.
me? If I'm the CEO and I
Yes.
pick up the financials and I don't like what it's telling, that's a reflection on me.
At 1000%.
So then what?
Then you make changes.
Okay.
It's that simple. The numbers are 1000% a reflection on you. And like, let's take it further. A lot of the work I do is in business identity and business strategy.
Mm,
So when I work with a business or a leader on their identity, we talk about two things. We talk
mm,
about the purpose of the business,
mm.
and we talk about the values of the business. And very rarely do I get to this point, but I love when I get to the point where I can also say to the CEO or the leader, now your purpose is your revenue line, and your values are all your costs. Because until you actually bring your P&L into alignment with your identity, you've got two things working in conflict with each other in your business. You've got the numbers and whatever your financial gurus are telling you.
Mm.
You've got a budget that is saying you should do one thing, and you've got a business identity that is saying you should do one another. But when you can reconcile that your revenue line is a realization of your purpose, and your costs are a realization of your values. Let's talk about an example of that.
Mm.
Um, you might have a value of curiosity in your business. This is a made-up example.
Yeah.
So how does curiosity show up in the way you do your marketing? Do you do research? How does it show up in the way you do learning and development for your team? Do you do workshops? Do you do collaborative experiences? How does it show up in the way there's just so many different ways that you can infuse curiosity into your whole P&L.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know you've actually reminded me of a conversation I had recently with a man named Ed Podolsky, an academic.
Mm.
And he talked about this idea of efficiency actually squeezing out innovation, because in the pursuit of efficiency, which you and I both know most businesses are on a bit of a warpath of efficiency at the moment, um, we squeeze out any space for innovation. You can't innovate without curiosity. So when I'm listening to you say that, I can't help but think, absolutely. Companies that profess to have a value of curiosity cannot be efficient at a cost, or by removing the cost of curiosity.
Yes. Yes, and They have to potentially think about efficiency differently.
Differently. Yeah.
Yeah, because curiosity can be efficient, but it's not in the conventional high margin
Yeah,
definition. It's in
absolutely.
this unconventional that curiosity creates opportunity kind of efficiency.
Absolutely. I've got to ask the real math of business ratio question, right? I feel like
Yeah,
we've primed it.
we
I'm
have.
so grateful for the thinking you've done in advance of this because I'm loving what you're sharing so far. If you were to create your real math of business ratio,
Yeah.
people to math, what would that be?
It's 100% people
Because
because the math is an artifact that supports what the people do. It tells the story of what the people do. It's the evidence of what the people did.
Mm.
It's not actually the math is not actually anything about the business. It's the people are the business, and the
Yes.
math is just the evidence of it.
Okay, you've added a beautiful layer to like this idea that your P&L represents your identity, your revenue line is your purpose, and your budget represents your, the expenses are your values. I love that so
Yeah.
much. I'm thinking about a P&L. I'm looking at the line items, right? But you've just said the maths is the evidence of what people did.
Yeah. I did not
Backward looking.
plan that. That just came out. I
I
don't
love
know.
it. This is why this is
Hadn't
so
thought
much
about that
fun.
before. Yeah.
This is why this is so much fun. So what you've just introduced is a bit of a time paradigm. So
Yeah.
maths also represents what people did, past tense.
Yes.
So tell me about if I just, and I love this because obviously we are literally riffing right now. Um, Tell me about the forecasting maths.
Yeah. But isn't a forecast built on I've done a lot of forecasting in my
I
experience,
imagine.
and it's always been built on prior results.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, you take your historical trends, your historical expectations, and you
Mm-hmm.
go, well, if we do this, this will happen. If we do
Mm,
this, this will happen.
mm-hmm.
So where people imagining what might happen, we're still it's still the people
Yeah.
doing the imagining,
Yeah.
and then the math is the evidence of that imagining.
And as you were talking, you're absolutely right because we work on a basis of what have we learned from the past to help predict the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But actually, I wonder if, and I could be wrong here, but I wonder if actually, if you were to do a bottoms up budget or forecast, you would actually just take the math of your purpose and the math of your values and say, that's what we just need to continue to strive for. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that
In an ideal world, I think
in
that's
an
what you would
ideal
do.
world. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. I I also think, and this is going to sound a little controversial to some people, I think people get strategy wrong.
Yes, let's go there. I love it.
I don't think strategy is about achieving goals. So many people go, like, our goal is X, so we need a strategy to achieve X.
Yeah.
I think that is quite limiting because choosing a goal of X is um it's arbitrary, it's 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 a point in time.
Mm.
What if strategy was about and that kind of strategy isn't actually a strategy. It's just a plan,
Mm, mm.
right?
Yeah.
I believe real strategy is about who you want to become. It's about the realization of an identity. So if you get your aspirational identity right,
Mm.
your strategy becomes the things we need to do in pursuit of the identity that we really believe in.
Yeah.
And then your P&L absolutely must reflect that.
Mm. Wow. So then let's get into to your thing. And it's
Yeah.
hard to believe that your thing is not the real math of business. It's hard to believe that your thing is not curiosity and not strategy. Because I feel like you're somewhat of a pseudo expert in all of those things. But in my head, I'm going, oh, I can kind of see why alignment would be so important here.
Yeah.
But if you can tell me what, I think alignment is such a positive, popular aspiration, so
Yes.
hard to land in practice. So can you just describe what you mean by alignment and how you use alignment in the work that you do?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. And it is it is something that a lot of people talk about in very aspirational terms, and it sounds harder than it has to be. Um, so the way I define alignment is quite simple. It's where our desire it it exceeds our capacity. It's where desire exceeds capacity. So if you think about, we were talking before about identity being purpose and values.
Yeah.
Think of that, I think, is like your truest expression of desire,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? My I desire to achieve this purpose of X with the
Yes.
values of Y.
Yeah.
That's a real true expression of an ambition of who you want to be. And if you can nail that, if you can have real clarity of that, that's real desire. It's
Mm,
actually most people, when you talk to them about their purpose and values, has nothing to do with money. No one
mm,
actually cares about money.
yeah.
So when you nail that, when you really have clarity of your ambition, of your real desire,
Mm,
then it's a question of how do you create the capacity and create alignment between your desire and capacity. You
mm,
can do that at an individual level, at an
mm-hmm,
organizational level, and then how at a strategy level for the business.
mm,
But it's like, how do you then create the strategy so that you can realize that ambition and take the actions, make the changes so that all comes into be? And I do that work with individual leaders. I do that work with organizations. And it's just the absolute joy of my life because when people come into alignment, like real alignment,
mm.
where they know what they want, when businesses come into alignment, where it's clear what the business is here to do and what they stand for,
Yes.
the transformation is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Could you describe, could you describe the journey maybe through the lens of a client that you've worked with? To be deeply connected and committed to your purpose and values and therefore your identity, it's actually harder than it sounds. To be truly like, yes, this embodies and is going to be everything I do. Could you describe, the journey that you take clients on that might, let's say, have a flashy vision and values and purpose on a website, but haven't truly got it?
Yeah.
Can you describe that journey that they would then go to really nail their desire and then work to create the capacity and alignment that you just described? So we can kind of appreciate the transformation that you take them through.
Yeah. I'll actually describe it through when I was at dictionary.com and I was the
Okay.
CEO of dictionary.com. sorry, my phone's ringing. When I was the CEO of dictionary.com, I came into the business, and the business, everyone told me that the ambition of the business was to modernize the dictionary. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. That doesn't really resonate with me. Like, I actually don't care about dictionaries, which sounded terrible because here
You
I
didn't
was
say that in your
the
interview,
C.
right?
No, I didn't say that. Here I was the CEO of dictionary.com, and I'm like, I don't care so much about dictionaries. Like, I'm here to run a business. Um, but like, but what does it mean to modernize a dictionary? And like, how do we turn that into a P&L? Like, how do we turn that into a revenue line? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that look like? How do we monetize that? Like, I was just so confused. I was just so like in the wilderness with that. And I sat with it for a long time, and I talked to the team about it for a long time, and there was lots of different ideas, but none of the ideas were the same, and it was very wonky. And so it took a while. Um, but I kept coming back to this, like, we went through some storytelling, and purpose always comes back to storytelling. Um, we did some we went through some things that people were telling us about, like testimonials about how they were using the dictionary. And it was um, people that were using it because they were learning English, and it was making their lives better because it was a tool they could use when they didn't know a word. Or someone had used it to name their child. Um, and I recalled back to my own personal experience where I was in a meeting with lots of executives, and this gentleman used the word pithy, Pithy.
Oh, yeah.
And I had not heard of this word before, and I thought he was saying pity, Pity. And I was like, why is he saying it, that we have to be pitty about it? Like, I don't know what he's talking about. This is like, it makes no sense. And finally, I understood that he was saying pithy. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I feel like an idiot. I have to look up on my phone what the word pithy means so I don't feel stupid. So, although I don't care so much about dictionaries, I do care about the fact that sometimes people feel anxious about language. And when you don't know words, it actually has a real impact on your life. So we took those stories and we took the impact it was having on people's lives, and we went, well, what if our purpose is to eliminate anxiety with the English language? And that became our purpose statement.
Wow.
And out of that came all kinds of real product lines and real strategies. So we could maximize the dictionary we had. And then we went, wait a minute, there's so much new language that's coming around. Like, what if we made a slang dictionary? Because, my kids were talking in language that I didn't understand. So I was like, we need a slang dictionary. And then we had, really radical ideas about keyboards that would, analyze your writing and give we didn't ever deliver on these, but we had really radical ideas for how we could deliver on eliminating anxiety with the English language. And it energized, and it brought the team together in such a way. And like, there was this real camaraderie and this real, this just like, we were in it together. We knew exactly what we were here to do. And at any time there was like, we don't know if this is in or out, it was like, does it eliminate anxiety with the English language? It's in, or it's not, and it's out. Like, it just made decision making so much easier. And then we would tell stories about, oh my God, we got this happened and it eliminated my anxiety. And so it just became reinforcing and beautiful and powerful.
I'm thinking about that is incredible for that to have come out as the purpose. But I'm curious, I'm listening to it going, at what point, like, it sounds like more would get in than get out. Like,
In what
sometimes
way?
purposes are a little bit big and esoteric and, you can kind of get there.
Yeah.
So how did you still be discerning with
Hmm.
what sounds to me anyway, having heard it for the first time, sounds like quite a big and far-reaching purpose. How do you be
Yeah.
discerning within that so it works as a really effective decision-making tool, which it obviously was?
Yeah. So that's the overarching purpose. But then,
Yeah.
we have to remember we are still running a business.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we kind of that's the desire bit, but then we have to
Mm.
think about the capacity bit
Capacity.
and bring that into alignment. And so the capacity was we are a dictionary and we have to use the assets that we have at our disposal.
Mm.
So, we had, and those assets were things like we have a database of words, we have all this historical data on how people have used the dictionary. We have the skill sets of our team and perhaps some cash flow to invest in some new talent, but not tons of cash flow, just a little
Mm.
bit.
Mm.
So the strategies we put forth had to kind of leverage the capacities that we had. If we
Mm.
had said, we're going to build agentic AI, and this was back in 2015, and it would have been well within the scope of the purpose,
Mm.
we didn't have the capacity for that.
Right. So that's interesting. I'm now understanding further. You've got the desire, but then your capacity, you need to work within your capacity and grow your capacity to the extent you can using your assets. So your capacity comprises opportunities, constraints being the realities of we run a business that has
Yes.
assets and resources and capability.
Yeah. Now, your desire will expand your capacity,
Yes.
but only to a point.
Well, it would expand your opportunities and you would then,
Yeah.
right? And then you would have to figure out, how do I optimize all my resources
Yeah.
to meet those
Yeah,
opportunities?
there's three ways that desire expands capacity. One is kind of better prioritization of the resources that you have, so less
Mm-hmm.
gets wasted.
Yeah.
Uh, Two is um, more focus. So kind of, it's another like less gets wasted, but like
Yes.
it's a different version of less gets wasted. It's like
Mm.
less gets wasted on friction as opposed to less gets wasted on things that don't matter. One is less
Yeah.
gets wasted on things that don't matter. The other is less gets wasted on friction.
Yeah.
But the third one is the one that's really powerful, and that is the will to find a way.
Tell us about that.
When you're clear that, like for me, my current desire is to create alignment in as many businesses as I can. Come hell or high water, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Like I work the late nights and I don't burn out.
Why don't you burn out? And the reason why I'm asking you this, I had a conversation with a client yesterday who is close to burnout.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, and we were talking about this tension between exhaustion and excitement.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you, come hell or high water, are going to continue to work to achieve your purpose but you don't experience, you'll do the hours without the burnout. Tell me about how that works for you.
Because I know why I'm doing the work. I'm so energized and lit up by the purpose that the work is easy. The work is easy. It's a joy. It's a passion. It doesn't feel like work. And I don't think burnout is the result of long hours. I think burnout is the result of long hours that are disconnected from purpose.
Mm, wow. I'm curious about like what you have done so far in our conversation is you have really straddled the hard of business and the soft of business and people, right?
Mm.
Which I think it's such a skill. How does that? I'm just curious about how that lands with the different individuals you must work with.
Oh, look, it depends on the individual.
Yeah, sure.
There's lots of personalities, but you know, I had a really interesting conversation with the COO of a business yesterday, and she's like desperate to work with me. She's like, I want everything you have. We need this change. We need alignment in our business.
Yes.
But the owner of our business is just like, he's a stubborn old man. Like, how are you going to change him?
Yeah.
And to me, and I have to credit Brene Brown with this line of thinking. Central to my work is the belief that everyone is doing the best they can.
Mm,
And I don't care how stubborn you are, how hard your edges are, how entrenched you are in the belief that the P&L is the P&L and it doesn't tell the story, that it's like we're selling widgets and widgets are widgets. And like, I don't care. You're doing the best you can. And you've come to that point because of the sum total of the experiences
mhm.
and the stories you've been told and everything that life has given you till this point. So in the work I do, I'm like just here to tell you some more stories and give you some different experiences that help you do it a different way.
Oh, I like that.
That's it.
And I can imagine if we use that founder as the example, very set in their ways based on his sum total of experiences and
Yeah.
hardships and wins and all the rest of it. Um, the natural tendency would be defense up, guards up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can
And
go
and we
ahead.
can just disarm. Like I don't have to push. I can just be
Yeah.
like, "Well, here I am."
And that's what I'm experiencing from you. Like, I can imagine you provide a naturally very safe place for people,
Yeah.
but even your approach is, I'm not here to change you. I'm just here to add extra things in your
Yeah.
awareness, and you can do whatever you want with them, really.
Yeah, and it's not even me adding things to their awareness because the secret to alignment, like the secrets, it's not even that a secret. It's not even a secret. I'm here telling everyone in the world about it.
That's right.
But the hack, if you will, is
Yes.
truth telling. It's truth telling. Because like if we want to align desire and capacity, we just have to tell the truth about what our desire is and our capacity is so we can bring them together. So it's just truth telling. And all I do is create a space for people to tell their truth. And if it's a group, if it's a business, if it's a team of people, I create the conditions within the group. I facilitate the truth telling
Mm.
and in a way that like no one person, I break down the power construct so that everyone can tell the truth.
How do you do that? That sounds like I can imagine if I'm listening to this, people's heads just exploding, going, but what about that dude? And what about that girl? And what about this person? And because they're not telling the truth, God forbid I'm going to lean in and tell the truth.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
There's a lot of models that I use for so one, it's about holding the space, like just showing up energetically and saying, this is what's going to, and I know that sounds woo woo and it is a little woo woo, but it is showing up with the intention and looking everyone dead in the eye and saying, you're going to show that I'm here. I'm here and I'm holding space for you to tell me your truth today. And people lean into that. But two, I use a lot of models, a lot of structures in how I structure my workshops that allow people to share without being put on the spot, to share without having to be in the limelight, to share. It's a co-creation process where the room is democratized. And it's just through different ways of structuring the process of the sharing. And I without without doing it, I don't know how else to describe it.
It's the structure and the facilitation genius, it sounds like, that you create, that environment.
Yes.
Now, I'm so glad you said woo-woo. Because I'm
the opposite of woo-woo.
Yeah, okay, so this is exactly where I was going to go, because I'm listening to this conversation and I'm going, oh, Liz, I feel so safe. I feel like we've gone so deep, and, obviously you create an environment that allows people to feel safe and seen, and oh, you're just this beautiful human. And then you talked about showing up energetically. And I was like, yeah, when are we going to start singing Kumbaya? But then in my head, I was going, but hang on, this is a chick that started out as an analyst. So there's something she's definitely hard in there. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Well, tell me your perspective on that. You said, no, you're actually not woo-woo. And tell me how.
I know people that are wearing crystals and that's woo-woo. So I have been described. I have a client who's you are, what language did he use? But it's you are so hard and so soft at the same time. And I think that is a good description of me. I cut through, but I am very generous and loving and warm at the same time, but I absolutely cut through. None of my people get away with bullshit. And I think what it is I have done the work. I've done my own work. I have been to hell and back in my own life, and I've had to find my own personal alignment. And I'm a living expression of my product. And let me tell you this, alignment is not a destination. Alignment is something you continuously seek. And I'm continuously refining and seeking and applying my own models and my own frameworks to my own life and my own business.
Yes.
And so, I think that if you had met me 15 years ago, there's a story where I got feedback from a head of HR that one of the CEOs in our portfolio didn't want to work with me because he found me intimidating. And my response was, well, he should grow some. And that's not me anymore. But there's that version of me. But now I'm people are magnificent. People all have a story to tell. And even that guy who should grow some, why was he intimidated by me? Little old me. And I think that's just the result of having done my own work.
I feel like we need to do quite often when I have incredible conversations on this podcast. I can't help at this point in the conversation say, Jazz, we're getting Liz back in for part 2. What is actually going through my mind is our part two is going to involve a glass of wine and maybe a fire,
Oh,
because I
I
reckon you've
love it.
just opened up this whole new paradigm to you. And that was actually what you've just shared was actually what was going through my head. I quite often say that, a lot of the conversations I have, if I were listening as my, junior audit, number buddy, I'd be like, purpose. What are you talking about? Like, just show me the numbers, give me the invoice. Whereas now, like you say, life has a way of what I call lifing you. And you can
Yeah,
choose to lean into that and do the work on yourself and kind of transform yourself into the other side. Um, so that's what's going through my head is let's do the next one over a glass of wine and maybe
I love it.
share our war stories.
100%.
What a gift that you're providing, and look, this idea that you are living and breathing your purpose in your personal life, in your business life, and you just show up in that with that full expression of you. I guess that alignment creates that simplicity for you. You just show
It
up.
does. It does, and my hope is that the people I work with get to experience that also in whatever their work is, in
Mm.
whatever their purpose is, whatever they choose for themselves, that they create the capacity to do that.
Pressure makes diamonds, right? Which is
Yes.
quite often why, when we go through our lows, we really, oh, this is what my purpose is, or this is what creates meaning for a lot of people. And quite often why that moment happens in your 30s and 40s is because that's typically when life lifes you.
Yes.
And that's why you kind of bounce around in your 20s going, oh, I can take on the world, I can do everything. Do you need to have life you in order to create that purpose? Like if I'm in my 50s, let's say, and I feel like, oh, I've just kind of just swum along things and I think I've got a purpose, but really quite happy. I'm quite happy meandering and things are going pretty well. Nothing's broken. Uh, I kind of feel, given the conversation we've had and the follow up conversation we'll have over wine, it feels, whether that's public or private, I feel like that person could be missing out. Or is there a different way for them to access their purpose and their identity and create that alignment for themselves and the businesses they lead?
Yeah, look, I've definitely worked with different people who have different degrees to which life has lifed them. Like, I've worked with people who, in comparison to my personal story, have had it quite easy. And I'm like, oh, must be nice. And I've talked to my therapist about like, I don't get people who haven't been through trauma. What is up with those ones? Like, how did they get it so lucky? And like, how do they just get to be happy all the time?
Mm.
Um, but 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 they can still have purpose. They just sort like it just comes from a different source. And at the end of the day, everyone is motivated to do something. And I think if you don't if you're you know I I wish I had a pen and paper right now, but I'll use my hands. Like there's this matrix of capacity and desire.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have lots of lots of desire and not much capacity, you end up struggling. Like you really try really hard because you really want to do great things and you really want to succeed and accomplish great things, but you just haven't figured out the capacity bit. So you end up struggling. And this is where
Mm.
your burnout people end up, right? Like
Okay.
this is where you end up overworked, you overpromise, you underdeliver, and you
Mm.
struggle, right? And then at the opposite quadrant where you've got lots of capacity,
Mm-hmm.
but not much desire,
Mm-hmm.
you end up sleepwalking. Like, could you imagine anything worse than sleepwalking through life?
Yeah. Very
You've
unsatisfying.
got you've got all the talent, all the EQ, all the IQ, and you've just given up. So you show up to work and you check the clock, you punch in, you punch out,
Yeah.
and you go home and you watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your sleepwalkers. High capacity, low desire.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got your bottom quadrant where you've got low capacity and low desire. And those are your survivors. And everyone thinks that survivors are toxic or they're resistant,
Yeah.
but they're really just depleted.
Huh.
They have low capacity, they have low desire, and they're just trying to get by the next day. They're really quite depressed. And it's usually once you're in survival mode, it's a steady decline further and further into survival mode.
Mm.
And then up in the top corner, where you've got high desire and high capacity, these are your shapers. These are the people that create the future. They're the change makers. They're the ones that take the business, industry, culture into the future.
Mm.
And they also take everyone else along with them. And
Okay.
so to answer your question about, people that have had life easy, that are like
Mm.
in their 50s and,
Yeah.
can they have purpose? I believe they can. They might be sleepwalkers at the moment, but like we can ignite purpose in them because they've got capacity. We just need to move them into shaper territory.
I love that.
And if we don't, they become survivors. Because in this chart, the pull is to where there's alignment. And there's two places with alignment in this chart, and it's in survival mode or in shaper mode.
Okay. We'll put a proper one up when we put the recording.
Yeah, I can send you the diagram.
I've just been drawing. That's incredible. That makes a whole lot of sense. And, even I love that we couldn't have timed this perfect because we do need to wrap up shortly. If people can just identify where they are in this matrix of yours, that is incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
This is where I'm at. Is it where I want to be? Yay or nay? Great. What do I need to do
I
to
need
move over
more
to shaper?
desire. I need more capacity.
Yeah.
I can
Woof.
send you, I have an electronic version with descriptions, so I can send
We'll
that
include
over.
it in the show notes if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Would be delighted.
That is a beautiful place to finish up. Liz, wow. Uh, I don't even know. I'm looking at all the, like I said at the beginning, I have a small handful of questions. I'm glad I didn't ask any of them because this conversation was way better. And I have no doubt that everyone that's listening to this wants to learn more. How is the best way for them to do that? And if they want to reach out and connect with you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to my website at liz-mcmillan.com. And my email is liz@liz-mcmillan.com. Pretty easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this incredibly thought-provoking conversation. It is wild to think that you are not an expert on the real math of business. I will just put it out there. I think we will
No,
be talking
that's
more.
your territory, and I'm the expert on alignment, but
I
I'm
love
glad
that.
that we've met because I think there's real synergy.
I do too. And I'm going to be talking about how we can rename the line items on the P&L through purpose and values. That to me
Yeah, please do.
is the
Spread
mic
that.
drop moment for me. But
Yeah.
there are so many other elements that have been really profound today. But thank you, Liz, for joining us. I cannot wait to have you back. Really appreciate your generosity and the way you've come in really prepared for this conversation. Really appreciate
no, it's
your
been a
time.
pleasure.
Thanks
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Take care.
And what a great chat with Liz, which leads us right into our listener question. And if you want to submit a listener question, you can now email us at realmathofbusiness@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and we'll hopefully get it in a future episode. This week's listener question for this episode is from Bert. Hello, Eleanor and team. Excellent show. Thank you. I was recently listening to your chat with Dr. Kat Page, especially the part about how we don't have We don't each have the answer. And it got me thinking about community in business. What does a good business community look like to you? As I am getting older, I am realizing I don't have all the answers, especially when it comes to computers and tech. Thank you, Bert. Well, Bert, first of all, love your self-awareness, and congratulations on the journey you've taken to get to this point where you're able to admit freely, I don't have all the answers. What do I do here? I reckon really when it comes to answering your question, what does a good community feel like or look like? I reckon there are two key paradigms that I'd encourage you to think through. That is the internal paradigm, internal in your business, and external paradigm, external outside of your business. So I think internally, start with your team, whether that's your executive team, whether that's your direct reports, start with your team and simply ask them what they think a good community feels like. Maybe get them to listen to the podcast with Dr. Kat and get their juices flowing and then co-create that together. A community only works if it works for you. There are so many great communities that I have walked into and they just don't vibe with me. So ask them the question. If we created a community feel in this team, what would it feel like? What would we do? What would we be doing? What kind of conversations would we be having, and create that community feel within your team? And then externally, I think this is where the options of business communities are plentiful. And so it's not where do I find a business community as much as it's which business community is going to be right for me. The answer to that is very personal. I am currently and always am in several business communities. Some are typically there to help me as a human who just happens to also be a business owner. So that's more of a personal development community. Even within those communities, the different personal development communities I've been in, they have served different needs along the way. At the moment, what I need from a personal development community is just a bit of mojo. It's a bit of like, get up off your bum, Eleanor, do the work. You're amazing. Just go get it. I just need, a bit of that cheerleader. I don't need the in-depth self-reflection and all that stuff because I've done that in the past. I've been in communities where I've been able to sit in that space in the past. My business community, so that helped me as a strategic business owner. What I'm in is more of a business growth community. So we're really focused on having conversations around how do you grow your business? What are the challenges as a business owner? And so those conversations are a little bit more, I would say a little bit more ruthless, a little bit more, I'd say, cutthroat. What I need from each of those communities are just very different. And of course, as my business has grown, the type of community and the type of support I've needed from that community has also changed. So what I would also say is just a kind of final point is the needs that I've had from each of those communities has changed. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the content, but more the mechanics and the mechanisms. So, I have had communities where I've wanted to spend lots of time with them. I've wanted to be face to face. I've wanted, to go traveling with them. And there are some communities where, I just want to get in and out. I want to do the thing, get what I need and get out of there. All of those are options to you, and they are options and questions for you to decide. What do you want from a business community, and where can I go and get that? And internally, how do you co-create a great community within your people? But I hope that's helped. I think this idea, and certainly it was one of the paradigm shifts for me with that conversation with Dr. Kat. I really hope that's helped to allow you to take the next step and create a business community that works for you. Thank you for listening to The Real Math of Business with Eleanor Bennett. If you liked this episode, remember to subscribe for more content and stay on top of The Real Math of Business. I've been Eleanor Bennett. Thank you so much for listening.